Running paddles means running sand, and that means running hot. So let's see if we can keep this Honda cool. Hello my friends, and welcome to Tom's Tinkering and Adventures. Today we're going to be working on this Honda 400EX quad again. Been working on this for a guy. I've done several things on this, installed a big bore kit and a cam, and we adapted some shocks, and today we are going to be adapting a additional oil cooler. Now the 400EX comes with an oil cooler. Let's see if we can see it up in here. There it is, right up there. But once you start doing some engine mods and then start running it in the sand, it doesn't take long to overheat this engine. This is an air-cooled engine, air oil cooled, and big power means big heat, and then the sand is an additional factor. Running in the sand takes a lot of power, creates a lot of heat. So this guy likes riding this in the sand a lot, so we are going to adapt this. And I believe this is a transmission cooler. This is not a factory part for this. It's just something that we're going to make work. And hang on a second, and I'll get a tape measure. We'll measure this up for y'all. All right, so our measurements are, it's about 10 inches long, 5 inches wide. And this is the box that it came in. I don't know if this is helpful to anyone, but there's a part number. You can see it's made in the lovely Republic of China. Not sure, I haven't looked that up. I don't know what this cooler is exactly for. Like I said, it looks like a transmission cooler or a power steering cooler or something like that. Anyway, we are going to adapt this to work on this quad. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this front plastic. I don't remember exactly what's involved in that. It'll take me a minute to figure it out, but if you've worked on these, you probably know. Let's see. I'm sure I got to take that off. And underneath here, I see these little quick disconnects. That's right, it's all coming back to me. Probably the tank might have to come off. I'll pull it all off, and we'll come on back and I'll show you where I'm thinking this is going to go. Plastic removed. We can see the oil tank up here, the lines going into the cooler, and looking on this side, I think is where we're going to tap in for our oil to go through our secondary cooler. And it looks like we should have plenty of room right about there. If we run it that way, it's going to stay pretty protected behind the front of the plastic, behind the bumper here. So what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to take these little wire routing plastic pieces out of here and see if we can't maybe zip tie this wire up and out of the way somewhere else. This one's attached to like a little bracket here. We'll take that off and just kind of move these a little bit. This looks like a pretty good location for it. And then I'll figure out how we're going to mount this thing exactly. Well, I got quite lucky on this install because the owner of this quad has this aftermarket LED light bar and has sort of just disabled the headlights. Got a little cover over the headlights here. And the plug for those, he's actually cut the wire. Someone has cut the wire, I guess, probably to wire in to this. So what I did is I removed, that plug was on the back side here. So I removed that plug, and then I have this plug here which goes to the ignition, and I moved it to the back. And I took what I think this is probably like the CDI box, and it was facing out, so I just pulled it out and flipped it around so it's pointing back. So now all this stuff is kind of out of the way, and we have plenty of clearance here. Plenty of room. So I think what I'm going to do is I've removed these the plastic wire holders those items. Just kind of get underneath there and squeeze them and they pop out. And you cut them off. I'm going to put some brackets right there, some L brackets, and we'll get the top mounts done. So I should be able to put an L bracket on each side, so 2 mounts up there. And then on the bottom, I'm going to have to figure out something to go from probably here, right there, on up. So I'll have to make a bracket for that. But I do have Zeppelin playing. I do have these corner brace brackets, so that's what I'll use on the upper one. I think these are gonna be too short for the lower one. We'll see. All right, there's one bracket installed. As you can see, I cut part of it off. Cut that leg down half the size. Installed it with a bolt, a washer, and a nut underneath. And then also, once I installed it, I bent this one a little bit. It's not tight yet, but you can see I bent it at a little bit of an angle. So there's that. Get this one on this side. They actually look like they're just a little bit on the wide side of things, so I may end up having to tighten it down and then twist it a little bit on the top. If you've ever installed one of these into a vehicle, they've got these like plastic ties that go actually through the fins. So I think that's going to work just fine. I'm going to get the second one installed. We'll see how the width looks and then figure out what we're going to do for the bottom bracket. All right, after looking at those upper mounts that I made, they were going to be just catching the outside edge right here, and I wasn't really too overjoyed with that because I was afraid like the those little zip tie things you put through there could slide out. So what I've done is I've bent them in kind of at an angle. I don't know how well you can see through that, but now it's going to go through here and through there, so there'll be plenty of meat, I guess, to grab it. And then I've taken this bracket and straightened it out. It used to be bent right there in the middle. I flattened it completely out and then I bent it down here, and that should be our lower bracket, and I think we'll have plenty of room there. Now I'm gonna have to drill a hole in here, so I'm gonna try to get nice and centered. You can't go too far back because this front bumper or whatever, it's kind of like a bolt goes all the way through there, so you got to go back just a bit. So make sure that if you're doing this, make sure you have room for the nut underneath here, so kind of closer towards the front. So I'm going to measure this out, drill a hole. I'm going to set this in here, and then we'll get the oil cooler itself mounted. Okay, I think I've got everything where I want it here. There's some pads that come along with the install kit, so I just stuck them on. They have an adhesive backing on there. And then here's the little zip tie things that you use to mount these. So I'm going to put those through the back of this. Actually, let's just put them through like that. There we go. And now I'm going to position this pretty much kind of where I want it, and try to get them in the same basic vicinity. There you go. So there's that one on that side. And probably what I'll do is I'll just count down like how many fins there are on this side, and I'll get it the same on that side. And I'll bring you on back and we'll mount the bottom one. Okay, on the bottom one I've got the adhesive pad stuck there. Put this thing through there, and then you can see it just goes right through the fins. So actually, let's try to get it as close as we can here, so we're centered up nicely. Let me put you in the stand here. I'm trying to do it with one hand. It was almost impossible. Okay. And that's through. Now, if you look at the top, I've put these little round discs on there. These are what come with the kit. So that side against the cooler, and then it has like these little tiny little, see that? I can barely see it, I suppose. Collet. And then that goes over the end of this thing here, and that's what locks it in place. So I'm just gonna push that all the way on there. And I'll lock that in. There you go. So I'll do the same on all 3 of these, get this locked in, and then we will get to plumbing it. Okay, after you cut the tails off of it, nice clean looking install. And now we have to plumb that thing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go from this feed line on the cooler here, and I'm gonna cut this line. So I'm gonna remove it first. There's 2 bolts here. Probably can pry it out of this bracket. There you go. Of course it does come out of that bracket, and then we'll take it off down here. I'm gonna take it off, and then we are gonna cut it. And then what's gonna happen is it's gonna feed from here into there, and then out, and then back into here. So it just goes into one cooler and then into the next. After taking a look at the line, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it right about at this bend. And this I found out is the pressure line. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna feed this into our new cooler and then come out of our new cooler and then go back into the original cooler. So I'm gonna use the pipe cutting tool I've got here, and we'll try to cut it kind of close to that bend. We'll see how well we can do. I could use a hacksaw for this as well, but since I have this, it works well. At least I think it does. It's been a while since I've used this thing. I may have to reposition my line because, there you go. We'll try it like that. Might work. I try not to crush it, you know. So if you have one like this, you just turn it and then you tighten the screw up as you go, and it slowly increases pressure on the little cutting wheel. Okay, there's the metal tube cut right there. Nice clean cut. Now we got our hose. Put a hose clamp on it. Feed it down in there. Right on there. Now the only thing I wish I had additionally was a, I forget what they call it, but it'll put kind of a, well, maybe it's a flaring tool, I guess. But these, I do have a flaring tool, but it's not going to flare this. This is too thick. But if we put a flare on that, it would kind of help to keep this hose from popping off. And now, I think what I'll do is I will plumb that one in over to this side. And then this one is going to go down over to the original oil cooler. All right, I'm trying to get you in here so you can see where the original fitting went. And this is the original fitting that I cut off. And this one is pointing down, of course, originally. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it around so it's pointing up. Now, this might just work just as is. I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to bolt it in this way and then just bring the line up and over this way. I don't think I can go over this frame. Maybe I can. I'm going to try that first. Oops. And then if that doesn't work, I'll pick it back up off the floor. You know, you can edit this sort of stuff out. And what I might do is I might cut it off somewhere else rather than coming up and over the frame. I'll have to look. I don't think the fenders touch this. Okay, bolted in that fashion. This hose, I can't really sneak it underneath the frame rail here. I just think that's going to have too much of a bend and it'll create a restriction. So I just got to kind of sit like this, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to set these fenders on here and we'll cycle everything through, you know, move the, nothing here is going to touch it. But I'll set that front fender on, see if anything is going to touch there. And if it doesn't, well, that's likely our easiest route, because if for some reason this cooler fails, it would just be a simple matter of taking out these two bolts, flipping this over, and then you could cut this hose to length and then just clamp it back together into one piece, or you could just buy a new hose at a later date. I'm just thinking about in the field type fixes. But as you can see, I've already got this other hose routed. I may be able to get just a little bit shorter here. I left it a little bit long. I just wanted to make sure we had plenty of room for flow to go through here. Like I said, the more you kink it. So I'm going to throw that front fender on real quick and we'll see what it looks like. And if that's the case, this is going to work, then we will just leave it as is and I'll cut this hose. Front fenders are on, and I don't know how well you can see under there. There's our hose. Focus. Hocus pocus. Everything looks like it fits pretty good. And let's get a good look up in here if we can. Everything looks like it's fitting pretty well up there too. I was concerned about the, I'm all zoomed in. I was concerned about that upper line there, but it looks like it is routed up and just touches the front fender. It's not crushing it down. So I could take maybe half an inch or an inch out of that and it's still gonna have enough bend, but I'm not too concerned about that. Looking good. So we'll get these fenders off and finish the install, and then we'll start the bike as well to make sure we don't have oil leak. Okay, oil should flow out of this pressure line up into here, through this cooler, then out into the factory cooler, and then dump out of the back of it and back into the oil tank, if everything is correct. So reassemble the bike and fire it up. I'm probably gonna have to add a couple ounces of oil. I don't know how much oil this cooler holds, but I imagine it'll be a couple ounces low. Okay, everything's mostly put back together. Let's fire it up and make sure we're not leaking. If I can remember how to start this thing. Let's see here. It should just be... And now look for leaks at the hoses. Okay, looks like we're successful. I had no leaks. I didn't check the oil, but like I said, I'm sure you're gonna have to add a couple ounces at the very least. Everything looks like it fits pretty well. So there you go, additional oil cooler. I don't know how much they charge for like a factory one, but I'm sure this is the way to go. So do a little bit of research, decide which one you want to use. I don't know if, like I said, if that number that I put on here is any good, but she's clean, pretty much tucked behind everything. You can still hit it, I suppose, but like I said, now you have a solution if you do punch a hole in it. That'll work. All right. If you're digging what I'm putting out, give me a thumbs up. And if you would, leave a comment down below. And if you're not already a subscriber, why not? Please consider doing so, right? Thank you very much for watching. Get out there and find your adventure. Adios.